Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. And we are back. Good. So let's try that one more time. Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. I'm sorry if that comes up twice. This initially was going to be a conversation about sex. I ended up having this conversation on Twitter back and forth over a video that was done by the Young Turks. One of the magazines put this video out to try to make this point of saying, hey, see, these guys are sexist. Look at these guys. They're talking about, you know, how they pick up women. But I'm not going to have that conversation right now. I have the conversation on a different day. I want to talk about the Chris Hedges article. Chris Hedges wrote an article named, let's see, The Permanent Lie, Our Deadliest Threat. I love Chris Hedges, and I mean that from the standpoint of his work. And I love Chris Hedges as, you know, a happily married man. But I like Chris Hedges. And liking Chris Hedges, he's grown to be a morbid guy. But morbid, that doesn't necessarily mean he's wrong. Like, ultimately, Chris Hedges takes a particular perspective. And I have to be honest, I kind of share the perspective that he takes on this. It is somewhat morbid, and yet the perspective may be true. People have this, they fetishize happiness. It's like, I need to be happy, I need to be happy. There's sometimes where you probably shouldn't be happy. Sometimes you shouldn't be happy. I love this article. This article is amazing. And he makes a point in a really damn good way. I mean, Chris Hedges is a fucking awesome author. So this is Truth Today. The Permanent Lie, Our Deadliest Threat. I'm going to read the first part, talk about it, and I want to go through what he considers to be a solution, or his solutions. The most ominous danger we face does not come from the eradication of free speech through obliteration of net neutrality or through Google algorithms. To steer people away from the dissident, left-wing progressive or anti-war sites, it does not come from a tax bill that abandons all pretense of fiscal responsibility to enrich corporations and oligarchs and prepares the way to dismantle programs such as Social Security. It does not... Let me explain that part. I'm assuming that everybody knows what he means. So one of the key strategies that Republicans tend to use is this draining. It's like draining the government, choking the government out, choking the life out of the government. We're spending a lot of money. It can be either on a war, it can be on military, it can just be, you know, pissed away. Now that we've given all of this money to the rich, we have a massive deficit. We need to cover that deficit, meaning we need to cut social programs. So we need to cut Social Security and Medicare, et cetera, et cetera. Now, Bill Clinton was willing to cut a deal with Newt Gingrich in order to cut Social Security, in order to privatize Social Security. That's fucking amazing. That was a Democrat. Obama was willing to make that quote-unquote grand bargain. That was willing to cut Social Security. These are Democrats. These are Democrats. That is not a line that you should toe. If you're a Democrat and you're not willing to protect Social Security, you shouldn't be in the Democratic Party. That, I mean, honestly, let's be honest. That's like a bare minimum of your existence. Let's keep going. That's what Chris Hedges means. It's pissing this money away, giving this money to plutocrats. After these plutocrats were bribed, essentially, they're bribing the politicians gives that money back to the plutocrats in regards to tax cuts and everything else. Essentially, that investment paying off. Now that all of this money, now that the government has been gut for all of this money, trillions of dollars, we need to cut Social Security and Medicare in order to make up the hole that we paid by giving those plutocrats all their cash. That's what Chris Hedges is talking about. Let's keep going. Let's see. It does not come from the opening of public land to the mining and fossil industries, the acceleration of ecocide by demolishing environmental regulations, or the destruction of public education. It does not come from the squandering of federal dollars on a bloated military as the country collapses, or use of the system of domestic security to criminalize dissent. The most ominous danger we face comes from the marginalization and destruction of institutions, including the courts, academia, legislative bodies, cultural organizations, and the press, that once ensured the civil discourse was rooted in reality, in fact, helped us distinguish lies from the truth and facilitated justice. Ultimately, what Chris Hedges is talking about is the biggest issue that we face. There are a lot of issues. There are a lot of things that come up, whether you're talking about environmental, social, whatever. The issue, though, is this post-reality. There's this the destruction of structures that would have got across this idea of what's real and what's true. And all those structures have been undermined by this thing of cash. You know, the media monetizes reality. So having a news show is not enough for a news show. They want to make it like a football game. Yeah, in this idea of dissent. So somebody protesting, at that point, that becomes this guy as a terrorist and take that guy away. The words themselves lose meaning. They become somewhat Orwellian in the things that they're doing. Part of this, and he's right about this. I mean, if you think about our society, you think about the structures of our society, he's absolutely right about this. You had a situation where one of the parties cheated one of the candidates. There was no consequence for the party cheating one of the candidates. Everybody knew that they cheated, and they continuously lied about it the entire time. You had a process where both parties find ways to shave people off of the ballot, making it more difficult for individuals to vote. And even in the election itself, when there was a demand for a recount, you had to jump through one hurdle after the next in order to get something to determine who actually won that election. All of these things become just pawns in a game. The purpose of this stuff was supposed to be governance. What it's turned into is purely this political ends with this idea of you have people gaming the system because they're paying other people to game the system in the way that they game the system. Where's the consequence for skating campaign finance laws? There were none. I mean, where's the consequence for cheating Sanders? Where's the consequence for these guys tanking the economy in the way that they did? You had Obama getting a huge amounts of cash standing between the pitchforks and the bankers. Where's the consequence? George Bush invaded a country and killed 1 million Iraqis. They don't even talk about it in the press. Where's the consequence? George Bush is out there fingerprinting right now. Tony Blair should be in a prison. Tony Blair should be under prison. The structures that would typically be in place that would look at this stuff and say, okay, this was wrong, this is not right, there's a consequence, there's something to make sure that these things stay on the rails. Those things are not there anymore. The media, everyone has their own version of the media. So Fox News has its version of the world, CNN has its version of the world, MSNBC has its version of the world. Everybody has their version of the world. Everybody uses their own facts in order to make up their own reality. With post-reality. What do you want to believe in? There's something out there that will give it to you to make that confirmation bias true. Chris Hedges is right. Our problem is unreality. You have a global cataclysmic threat of climate change. You have a large part of the population that says, I don't care that 90-something% or 98% of the studies for climate change show that this is taking place and this is human-made or this is man-made. I don't care. My facts say otherwise. It's like, so wait a minute. If these guys are the scientists, what facts are you using? I have my feelings. And there's this guy named Bob who's sitting in a truck who has equipment that tells me that climate change is not happening. It's this Russian hoax. It's like, come on. Where's reality? Where's reality? Chris Hedges is right. The problem with this is this was done for a few reasons. So Republicans attacked this thing of Republicans attacked reality because ultimately these guys are plutocrats. For them, the destruction of government is positive. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Ultimately, they need enough government to protect the wealth of the 1% that they serve, but not enough as to regulate that 1%. Meaning when these guys are screaming about freedom and justice and everything else, that's not for you. Freedom is for the person who has the capital. You're in a capitalistic society. Your freedom is determined by your range of decision space. Their pleas of freedom is purely for them to do what they choose, whenever they choose, even if it means at your expense. Freedom for what? Or freedom for who to do what? Democrats have destroyed it, incidentally, for a different reason. Like, Republicans can make this case where they attack government. Government is a problem. Government is a problem. Government is a problem. Don't you want more of your money? Ultimately, again, they're not talking to you. They're talking to the plutocrats, the people with the actual cash. The Democrats have failed for a second reason. They're feckless. They can't get anything done. How can you scream about poverty for 60, 70 years and still have rampant poverty? At some point, people look at what you've done, they look at your works, and they say, oh, dude, you're not living up to the expectations that you yourself set. Meaning, it's not us telling Democrats what they're supposed to be. Democrats scream at the top of their lungs about the poor, the middle class, and all this other stuff. But when you get down to brass tacks and you see what they do when they're in that office, in no way are they actually supporting workers or the poor or the middle class. They're apathetic towards those things. They're obsequious to cash in the same way as Republicans. They're just less obsequious. just from a basis of comparative standard. You look at this and say, well, they're better because Republicans are just so batshit crazy. But is that all you want? Like, is that all you want? Is that all workers want? To have somebody that's apathetic to their interests and to their wants? What I'm getting at is the failure of Democrats is parcel also to this destruction of this idea of institutions. Democrats were paid to do it in the same way the Republicans were paid to do it. And they have these utopian ideas that they can take huge amounts of cash, and yet they can pass this kind of incremental policies. And at the end of the day, still end up serving the person who's giving them that massive amounts of cash. Chris Hedges is absolutely right. Chris Hedges is a gloomy guy, but Chris Hedges is absolutely right. And I think it's a hard argument to make that that's not true, what he's saying. His solution to this, however, is, I want to say, disturbing. He's right. The disturbing part about it is not so much that he's not right. It's like looking at this thing and saying, okay, I see no particular path to get to that point. Like, for you to articulate, this is the vision that we need in order to make this work. And you sit there like, okay, how do you get to that vision? And he's like, I have no fucking clue. I have no clue. I suppose that's why Chris Hedges is somewhat of a gloomy guy. He's looking at this like, okay, this is going to fail. This is going to crash and burn. And we're heading for a rock. We're going to hit a rock. There's an asteroid that's about to hit the planet. Let's see. Let's switch over to Chris. We must pit our power against power. We must build parallel institutions and organizations that protect us from corporate assault and resist the corporate domination. We must sever ourselves as much as possible from the vampire state. The more we can create self-contained communities within our currencies and infrastructures, the more we can starve and cripple the corporate beast. This means establishing a worker-run cooperatives, local systems of food supply based on vegan diet, and independent artistic, cultural, and political organizations. It means obstructing in every way possible the corporate assault, including the blocking of pipelines and fracking sites, and taking to the streets and sustain acts of civil disobedience against censorship and attack on civil liberties. And it means creating sanctuary cities. All of this will have to be done the way it has always been done, by building personal face-to-face relationships. We may not ultimately save ourselves, especially with the refusal by the elites to address the ravages of climate change, but we can create positive resistance where truth, beauty, empathy, and justice endures. His point, he didn't say it explicitly, is you're not doing this because it's like, I'm going to have this day in the sun. You're doing it because you have no other choice but to do it. If you believe in it, you do it because there's a chance. If there's any chance at all to save our ass, I want to take the chance to save our ass. And ultimately, I feel like this is just right. Whether the result of this saves me or not is somewhat besides the point. This is right. You're going to occupy your time somehow. How are you going to occupy your time? I'm going to occupy my time with a certain amount of integrity associated with trying to save something, to fix something, to get something in a better way. He's talking about a different life. Like he's saying, your solution to this is ultimately, A, to live differently, but also to create communities of living differently where you can starve the beast. And the beast in this case is not the government. The beast in this case is kind of the corporate entities where you're continuously buying from and you're continuously giving power to by supporting and all this other stuff. My issue with this is, I don't think people behave in ways purely from their own standpoint. Like I don't have this huge issue or belief in free will in this case. Meaning, once society is set up in a particular way, people conform in the ways that society is arranged. You may reach a certain point where people are so pissed off and so disenfranchised that things are so bad that those people peep their head up from where they are and try to get substantial change. But what is that breaking point where the society turns because things are so bad? And that's my gloomy point. I don't know what that point is. I don't know what that point is. Under my model of the world, people conform to the things that are around them. Meaning, if you're born up in a society, if you're raised in a society that says McDonald's is fucking awesome, Burger King is fucking awesome, you go to church on Sundays, you must talk a particular way, act a particular way, do a particular thing, all this stuff. Russians are the bad guys. China is, we're in debt to China. If you grow up and you're inundated with this type of stuff and this type of rhetoric, it would be insane for you not to incorporate that into who you are, into your particular worldview of things. I'm making this case that people are indoctrinated into a particular society and to believe certain things, to have a workable point of view of the world. How am I going to get people to have this kumbaya moment when people are, for the most part, robots? I see no path to that. I see no path. It's like you may get, I guess the feeling or the path is, if you get somebody who becomes a lightning rod for a particular thing, and that person who's a lightning rod can drag other people into the process. Maybe. But what Chris Hedges is saying is, you need to create your own communities, and those communities need to come together in solidarity. And I agree with him. Whether you're talking about Black Lives Matter, whether you're talking about this kind of like LGBTQ communities, or you're talking about environmentalism, all of those things need to have a certain amount of intersectionality. Meaning, if it happens to one, it should happen to all. We're all united on this. And when I say the left, I mean the entirety of the left. There should be no thing where it's a Black Lives Matter protest because somebody shot, some kid in the street that was unarmed, and the only people who go are African Americans. Or, it's a women's march, and the only people who go are women. There needs to be a certain amount of intersectionality in the way that people react. It's normal, everyday life. I don't know if Chris Hedges is going to get people to be vegans. I think that's going to be a hard sell, even though he's right, because we're fucking up the environment in this case. But at the very least, if you can get people together and to get people to understand that they have a common interest in the way that the world is, in the way that their society works, then maybe. I understand why Chris Hedges is a downer. I suspect he doesn't see that taking place. And even in his own thing, he's saying that may not necessarily take place in my lifetime. Yeah. It's distressing. It's one of those things where it's like, yes, Chris, you're right. This is grim. And then it's like, what do you do about it? Well, everybody needs to come together in a kumbaya moment. So you're saying there's nothing to do about it. So yeah. Let's see what everybody got. Oh, yes, indoctrination. Think the same thoughts as a great grandpa. You're a traitor in the family. This is a serious problem. Refusing to think. Agreed. And the refusing to think thing, keep in mind, you're programmed. It's like anything else. Think of the number of people who went to church on Sundays. I was one of them. And as you go to church on Sundays, that preacher says something, and as a kid, you take it as if the preacher is actually a serious person. It's fucking head in the clouds. But the kid doesn't know that. The kid takes that as some adult is saying something. He sees his parents and everything else. He internalizes the thing that's being said. That kid is being hit in the knees. Ultimately, that kid is being forced. He doesn't even know it. He's been indoctrinated with a certain point of view of the world based on this kind of religious dogma. His parents think they're doing the right thing. His culture, meaning that little bubble of religious people, they think that that person is doing the right thing. They have their beliefs and everything else. They never gave that kid a choice. They never gave the kid a choice. How many people do you have walking around that are zombies that believe in this stuff purely because they were taught this stuff as a kid? What if they weren't taught this stuff as a kid? What if they were taught something else? They would probably have an affinity for something else in the same way that they had an affinity for Christianity. I'm just making a point that people are often indoctrinated at an early age. It's not the easiest thing in the world to shake them out of it. In order to have that kumbaya moment, something has to shake people out of the complacency. And the question becomes, what is that factor? What is that thing that shakes people out of their complacency? And I don't know what positive thing. Like, I don't know a glorious moment that's just awesome and people just wake up because of some glorious moment. It's usually the opposite. It's usually things are just going so horrible and so miserably bad that people respond in a particular way. And they become acutely aware and focused on something, even though they don't necessarily have a political mindset. Like they're angry, they're mad, they're in a particular disposition. But they aren't necessarily of the consciousness that you want them to be to understand that this issue is of class. They're just angry about something. And yes, they can be harnessed, but how? Are we there yet? And when do we get there? What's the point at which we get there? So yeah. Roseanne Maternana. Hey Jamal, what's happening? Jenny Lynn, no hierarchy, no masters. Agreed, Jenny Lynn. Agreed. I don't know why anybody agreed to it, personally. Garden Gnome, Jamal is trying to get us to donate to TYT, Brom. That's what you miss. I'm trying to get... This is Stephanie. What's happening, Steph? Mark P, the economy is not zero sum. The rich are betraying themselves. Healthcare, technology, etc. Medical advances are slowly with the society of poverty. Mark P, they don't get it. They're greedy. Like when FDR and Roosevelt, when these guys are talking about saving capitalism, they completely miss that point. These guys are not on the political spectrum. It's just so happened that Democrats sit so far to the right that Republicans are just that much further. And the news media talks to these guys as if they're just normal politicians. These guys are rabid off the fucking political spectrum. His BEWBS, Jenny Lane Brahm Jamal showed us his Bebs. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means, Jen. For the second companion, Brahm Jamal's funky pop Riker came to life and said he was going to grant all of our wishes. Is that what Riker said? That's funny. Michael Mike, the Russian bot. No government contracts for media companies, parent company subsidiaries, major stockholders with substantial common ownership. Copter Force. Jamal believes in sanctuary titties. Everybody believes in sanctuary titties, Copter Force. Garnome, exactly. People need to become self-sufficient. One of the ways Gandhi succeeded was by subverting the garment trade, for example. Hey, Garnome, I agree with you, man. I agree with you. It's like, but how do you get people to understand that what they do, meaning the purchases that they make, the things that they buy, the things that they eat, actually does affect the wider world? Meaning, when you're getting that hamburger from McDonald's, you too are contributing to climate change. When you're getting in your car to go to work, you too are contributing to climate change. You're contributing to the destruction of this environment. When you're eating that particular hamburger, it's like, yes, you too was contributing to some animal being tortured in a cage. But how do you get them to see it? Like, oftentimes I see people being completely disconnected from the things that they're doing. So they take action A, not understanding that something else that's a little bit external to them takes place because a bunch of other people also take action A. They consider action A to be completely normal and rational in their particular society. I'd argue that if what you're doing is destroying your world and your environment, then it's not necessarily rational. You're just normalized it. There's a difference in those things. It's a difference in those things, a massive difference in those things. Lisa Hauserman, I'm back. BB Hammer, I backed up the chat and totally agree with your comments about geoengineering. Moni G, hello Jamal, hello all. What's happening, Moni G? Jamal, I really enjoyed your chat with Victor today. I know him for some time now. He's a person who helped to start seeing things in a different manner for years. Lisa Hauserman, that chat was fucked up royally. So Victor is coming back on the show. He's coming on my show, the Progressive Soapbox. That's the big. For those of you who don't know, Victor is a guy who started Bernie or Bust. He's gonna come on my show on Saturday. I'm gonna put up a promo for it. He's in a new thing now, it's called CFAR. He's trying to get people to sign contracts saying, this is what I would do in that office. It's almost like a contract trying to get candidates specific things of what the candidates can do. None of this fuzzy language stuff. When you're going into that office, you're doing XYZ. The people themselves have commissioned you to do XYZ, and you're going to be judged on whether or not you do XYZ when you're in that office, or at the very least, take positions and take stances that try to push forward X, Y, Z. And X, Y, Z are variables, by the way. I don't necessarily mean them X, Y, Z. Somebody's going to say, what is X, Y, Z? But yeah, Victor, yeah. It was a good conversation. I look forward to talking to him on Saturday. So yeah. But thank you, by the way. I feel like I didn't do my homework. That Chris Hedges article is long. I can't read it, listen, and type at the same time. Hello, jerk. That Chris Hedges, yeah, it is long. Chris can be a little bit long-winded. That's true. Jenny Lynn, if all people really conform like that, I'd have no one to talk to. I don't think all people conform. You're always going to have people on the margins. There's always going to be some percentage that is not in that mix. There's no such thing as absolutes in this case. Which is weird, since saying there's no such thing as absolute to some degree is somewhat of an absolute in and of itself. Strange, it's oxymoron. The point comes when the state begins relying on extreme forms of violence to keep order. Yeah, when it's no longer just kind of manufacturing consent. It's anybody who's protesting is getting a boot to just the naked power of government when it has no clothes. Lisa Hauserman, that's my understanding as well, but I don't even hear this from so-called progressive thinkers. They say we're conspiracy theorists. Conspiracy theorists about what? We have our own software, open source, even replacements for Twitter, Facebook we should desire. We have our own intelligence service, WikiLeaks. We have our own agri-tech. Mark P, that's interesting, right? That's damn interesting. Like, worker co-op, a Twitter, or worker co-op, Facebook. I mean, the software is, I'm pretty sure you can find it as open source software. What is wrong with that idea? That's not a bad idea. That's not a bad idea at all. I love that. I mean, because under normal circumstances, how are you going to have civilian control of the process? And right now, Twitter, Facebook, Google, all those things are private corporations. At any point, they can shadow ban information. They can hide your particular site, your particular links. They can do whatever they want in this regard. They're a private corporation. If Twitter wants to delete your account tomorrow, Twitter can delete your account tomorrow, and the most you can do is bitch. Nothing will change. Same thing with YouTube. They can gut your dollars tomorrow. It seems like it would make perfect sense to have a worker co-op of the people who are on YouTube owning YouTube. And I don't mean YouTube, I just mean their own thing, whatever that thing is. But owning that process as a worker co-op to prevent this idea of corporate interests just making random decisions that's adversely affecting millions of people at a time. That's a problem. I mean, think of the problem of the political impact of Silicon Valley, Facebook, Google, all these guys being Democrats. And these guys, to some degree, protecting Hillary Clinton during the election by hiding certain information that people were searching. That's outrageous. That's outrageous. That should never happen. Hoodie woman in Louisiana. Oh yes, indoctrination. Think the same thoughts as great grandpa, or you're a traitor to your family. This is a serious problem. Refusing to think. Republics are awful. We can't trust our representatives largely. The red wabbit. Yeah, it wasn't always that way. I mean, you have an oligarchical process. I mean, ultimately, think about it. Think about it for yourself. It makes sense why it becomes this way. You have a system that's flush with cash, meaning in order to get elected, you need massive amounts of cash. Now, whether you want to say these people have a workable point of view of the people who are giving them the cash, or whether they lean towards the cash, or whether it's a little bit of both, I don't particularly care. What it typically boils down to is, I need a large amount of cash to get elected. I am running as a Democrat. I believe that I can take this large amounts of cash and work around the edges. And the edges is what I consider to be lefty. Meaning what's left at the edges, the crumbs of what they're willing to go for. That's what's considered the Democratic Party, and that division is the difference between Democrats and Republicans. One side is just completely rapacious, the other side, we believe in degrees. We believe in degrees. But ultimately the issue is the same. Both parties need to accept massive amounts of cash to get elected. In order to take that cash, you're going to lean in a particular direction. If you don't lean in a direction, that cash is either going to be used against you, or at the very least, you're not going to get it. Especially if you bite the hand that feeds you by passing some kind of legislation that hurts the interests of those people who are thinking about giving you the cash in the first place. It's like anywhere else. If I'm paying you to do a job, are you not constrained by the cash that I'm giving you? Are you going to talk any way you want to talk? Are you going to, speak any way you want to speak? Are you going to, have sex on the desk at work? You're constrained by the money that I give you. This is no different from politicians. I don't understand why people think this is different. It's not an issue of integrity. You need to get elected. Even if your head, if you think I can do stuff around the edges, I can take this cash and do good things around the edges, and this is the best that can take place in our political system. You may think that, and you're still part of the problem if you think that. I'm just making the point that in both cases, in both scenarios, cash is the thing that governs the process. The issue is cash. The issue is who's paying them. There are no pitchforks to go against that cash. Ultimately, you just have cash. What Chris Hedges is saying is there is a need for pitchforks. That's what he's saying. Damn straight Green Party of Santa Clara. They want to take this from us, and soon. Let's see. Alejandro the Spot, a creative experiment. I could never thank you enough. No one has the resources to thank you both from the bottom of my heart. I do. Neoliberals need to be bought to heel. Titus. It becomes the way that late-stage capitalism sets in, and that's when everything is up for sale, including the representatives. Brahm, SL1. I know. They're hollowing the country out. I mean, literally. Like, and from the political standpoint of people losing this thing of trust, or these guys just completely shameless and all loss of integrity. It's also the public losing a certain amount of interest. I don't think the public assumes integrity in the political process. I think the public assumes these guys are bought. That should be outrageous. There is no situation where the public should accept that, and yet the public accepts it as being the normal due course of politics. These guys being bought has been normalized. That's problematic. Again, Chris Hedges, people need to, it's like, why are you accepting something like this? Why are you accepting this much corruption in your process? It's as if the bureaucracy of it all makes it as if this is some kind of unwieldy contraption nobody really has control over, and so it's just this kind of bureaucratic nightmare where these guys are getting paid to do particular favors for those people, etc., etc., etc. Chris Hedges is right. He's right. And yeah, late stage capitalism, they're buying this stuff out. We haven't even gotten to the point where the machines have started to take over. I mean, other countries are farther along than us on this point. But we will get to a point where these shopping malls will no longer bring people in those stores, because ultimately you don't necessarily need workers there. Or much of the stuff is being done online. Or the groceries will either be mailed to your house, or you just go to a checkout counter. You don't necessarily need a person there at that checkout counter. A lot of this processes will get automated more and more and more. And you'd have less and less people working in the service sector because you would need less and less people. That's not even talking about the jobs that are shipped overseas, because let's say they raise the income rate or the minimum wage by $15 to make sure people have a living standard. Well, that's great for the people who are able to, get that living standard. But it doesn't necessarily mean that if corporations see an opportunity, they won't leave the country. We have to take these things into account. We're not even having these conversations. It doesn't even come up. Neither party brings this stuff up. It's amazing the way they gleam over the stuff as if it's not part of the process, where technological unemployment is not part of the process, not part of an issue. Yeah, both these parties are bought, man. Both these parties are bought. And yes, I agree with you. Late stage capitalism, everything's up for sale, including people. Louis Bay, bro, Jamal, why don't we as a people just demand that the public servants perform the duties of the office under the authority of the people Constitution? I think that's what Chris Hedges is talking about, but we look at each other as individuals, if that makes sense. Like, we don't look at each other as this kind of societal framework where all of us are united and, this is kind of 99%. We look at each other as individuals. I go to my house, I have my specific job, I have my specific thing, I have my particular thing that's going on, my neighbor says their thing. All of us are separate and distinct from one another. Well, if you're separate and distinct, you've been atomized in this way, you don't necessarily see yourself as part of a larger community. It is far easier to manipulate you and hurt you and exploit you if you find yourself purely as just an individual as opposed to be one of a group. Imagine a situation where you as a person needed to get a drug or buy some kind of medication. What is the chances, what is the rate that you as an individual can get that medication as opposed to the United States government as Medicare bargaining on behalf of you and the rest of the country? I'm making this point that you as an individual is far weaker than the societal structure itself, meaning if you were part of the society and the society was functioning as one, that's a far different animal than you functioning purely as an individual. The rugged individualist. That thing has been ensconced in our society, and that has been a problem in our society. Americans are not a team, army of one. Dax Jacobs. Yeah, the American people need to unionize. Not just unionize, we all need to recognize that we are one. We're one. I'm aware of that, BB. I'm just stating that I have no problem with the Donna interview. I don't either. Copter Force, parliamentary system, direct democracy, a public. I don't know. I think the whole parliamentary system is the best. I have to be honest. I tend towards this kind of socialist anarchist thing, or libertarian anarchy. My problem with it is somewhat of a practical issue. There are global issues that affect us. These idea of small communities, I don't think there's anything to go back to in this way. Like, I don't think there's any place for humanity to go or place humanity was. We're always in this kind of continuation of just kind of growing into something else. There is no final destination, nor was there a starting point. The anarchist thing, and many of the principles make sense to me. Power needs authority needs to justify itself, no hierarchy, this type of stuff. But But I don't know how that works from the standpoint of global events. Meaning, I don't know how that government squares itself from something like a refugee crisis where entire countries themselves weren't able to handle that particular crisis. That crisis was handled by, the entirety of the continent. But if we're talking about just how people interact with one another, yeah, this hierarchy of stuff, that makes no sense to me. I don't understand why anybody would subordinate themselves to anybody else over something that's fictional as cash. It's just fucking crazy. Dale Chomsky, studies have shown that a ridiculously tiny percent of the population need to mobilize to implement change. Something like 3 or 5%. We've been atomized for a reason. Dale Chomsky agreed. Dax Jacobson, I'm Australian. At one time, America inspired the workers' movement worldwide. Our Labour Party uses the United States spelling of labor rather than the British version of labor because of this. Fucking A. Man, how far we've fallen. How far we have fallen. I like the idea of anarcho-socialism and no hierarchy. Also, in theory, don't get me wrong, Copter Force. He asks tough questions and acts twice. Yeah, he did. You're talking about Tim Black? Yeah. I have a review of Zach Howler's thing. I haven't pushed it up yet. I'm checking it over, make sure nothing crazy in it. Anna, what's happening, Anna? No, not libertarianism. Not libertarianism. It's a socialist libertarianism. Think of this kind of anarchist environment of sorts. And by libertarianism, I don't mean the American version. I mean the European version. Green Party of Santa Clara. We should. And look, I agree with you. The libertarian thing is ridiculous. Their version of the world is cartoonish. I don't know. Their version of the world is cartoonish. Yeah. Hierarchies are written into our DNA. The key isn't eliminating them, but rather reducing the harm they cause. I don't think hierarchies are written into our DNA. I don't know about that one, but okay. Libertarian socialism. Yeah, Anna is like anarchists or anarchism. Actual libertarianism. Yeah. They call it libertarian socialism in America because the libertarians are in America. They have these crazy Republicans. All systems have problems because humans, no disagreement there. The red rabbit. Yeah. Here's the thing. Any system that you take on from in a societal system, there's going to be issues. There is no utopia. Utopia does not exist. All systems, for the most part, are going to have issues and problems associated with it. The question becomes, what are the problems that you're willing to deal with versus the problems that you want to get rid of? If you want to get rid of poverty and crime and corruption and those type of things, well, you need a different system. This particular system breeds those things. Yeah, you need a different system. It breeds those things. Copter Force. Jamal, listening to you sound very interesting. Just want you to know I'm here. Oh, that's my mama. Capitalism can have ethics on a small scale, at least. Don't you guys think? Just people selling shit in a marketplace, it's as natural as birds flocking. For fuck's sake, try it and change it. It's not natural or otherwise. Put it this way. I think it's natural from the context of not having enough to go around. If that makes sense. But cooperation is natural. Like, you don't have to have this adversarial relationship in which you're trying to sell things. You could also cooperate. You could have a society based on cooperation. Now, here's the thing. If your society was different, say, for instance, your society was based on cooperation, a lot of what you consider to be normal changes. There's an aspect of you. Gardner was right in this. There's an aspect of you that is fearful and terrified and scared and, looking for hierarchies to protect themselves and all this other stuff. There's also an other aspect of you that mirrors the emotions of other human beings. This kind of empathetic part of you that looks to cooperate and seeks to cooperate. It depends on which one your society is going to ping. Your society just pings the former. Just pings the former. So yeah. Right libertarianism and an oxymoron, and only libertarianism has ever existed in the world was left-wing anarchism. Jenny Lynn. Yes, agree, Jenny. I might agree with that. Brom, what did Brom say? Hoodie Woman, Louisiana. Libertarians want to keep their money and never share it with anyone. Not good for others and bad for their character. Hoodie Woman, Louisiana. Yeah, the libertarian thing is, like I said, cartoonish. I don't know how... It's like, I want to keep mine and I want everybody to just kind of do their own thing. So you want private power as opposed to state power. Yes. I want the 1% to own 40% of stuff. And I consider that to be freedom. It's like, how is that fucking freedom? You've handed over the keys from one thing to something else. You just now have this concentrated wealth That's controlling things. You don't have freedom in this scenario. I'm sorry, you don't. Like, the scenario that they envision is not a free society in the least. You're talking about just corporate private interests that is dominating the situation. It's fucking insane. It's a cartoonish version of the world. Yeah, right-wing libertarianism is insane. And yeah, it was co-opted from Europe. Yeah. Timothy Young, wasn't democracy considered cartoonish way back in its inception? You talking about in Greece? I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, well, look, I don't know. I'm going to say I don't know. I don't know. I don't even know if they had a concept of cartoon during that time. Like, I don't know if ancient Greece had a concept of cartoons. They are all caps. It makes zero sense. No hierarchy, but have a capitalist economic model. Brahm SL1, socialism within a democracy works because it prioritizes the needs and wants of the many over the few. Brahm SL1, agreed. I believe the original co-opted the term. I believe originally co-opted the term. Dr. Jacobson, we need a financial system based on scalping the rich for about 2 months. Then, once they're all dead, we'll work on the next system. Is that... I say eat the rich. He's saying scalp the rich. You one-up me, Dax. God damn it. Corporate right on Jamal. Thank you. Hoodie Wink, Louisiana. In Greece, yeah, good one. Well, Greece is different. Greece doesn't own its own currency. I mean, Greece is under the thumb of the European Union, so they're not... The United States is a sovereign currency. We're not going to go bankrupt. We can't go bankrupt. We own our own currency. We're the reserve currency of the world, at least for the time being. Yeah, and ultimately, you know, the Fed is a creature of Congress. So yeah, we're not going to go bankrupt. Greece is different. Greece is under a different financial model. It's almost like a state. You know, it would be like if Texas went bankrupt. Well, Texas is under the auspices of the United States in this case. It's their own state, but they don't own their own currency. Texas is not printing dollars. Greece does not print euros. Greece is purely dependent on the European Union for that. So, yeah. From SL1, Dax Jacobson, when do we start and how much per scalp? Karl Marx coined the term capitalism. It was a pejorative. It should have been a pejorative. It should have been a pejorative. I mean, come on. It's a tool like anything else. It's an economic system. The wild part about it is people don't recognize that it's a system. They think it's natural as natural can be. Like, in their mind, this is natural. This is just the way things are. Capitalism wasn't necessarily the predominant thing over the course of human history. I mean, so they're acting like this thing is the norm. It's not. The Republicans co-opted the term libertarian, bragging and laughing about it. Genuinely, yes, that's absolutely true. Yvonne Mangalos, don't say that. The United States can go bankrupt. China, Japan, the biggest holders of the United States debt. That's not really true. How can we go bankrupt when we have our own currency? How? The Congress can instruct Fed to print money whenever the Fed needs, not the Fed, but the Congress can direct the government to essentially pay down the debt anytime they want to pay down the debt. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, right now, could get them to print $1 trillion nickel or something like that, $1 trillion coin, and put that coin in the Fed for them to take the money down they take the debt down bit by bit by bit by bit. The debt is not what you think it is. That's my point. We're not going to go bankrupt. This fiat system we have cannot go bankrupt. It's impossible. Promise. Oh, yeah, that's my point. It's impossible. We can't go bankrupt. No, Jamal, not how it works. Yes, on the coin part. Kevin, I may be a little bit off. It's not the Fed that prints it. The Fed has to go somewhere to get it printed, in which case it just distributes it to the other banks. I'm just making a point that we have fiat currency. We can't go bankrupt. The United States prints its own money. It's like, where do you think the money comes from? It comes out of thin air. We're not going to go bankrupt. You can print more money, worth less, no confidence in the United States dollar. Yes, the United States will, if it does not, stop its wars. So, Yvonne Lagolis, we've been printing money for what, 20 years now? I mean, how much money have we put into regards to liquidity? We put trillions of dollars. I think we put like $22 trillion that the Fed has been printing. I don't see the inflation. I don't see the inflation. The United States can pay its debts. Now, it's a different question on whether or not Congress would do that. That's a different question. That's a different conversation. I mean, the debt is a creature of Congress. Congress controls the purse strings. If Congress wanted that debt paid down, Congress could pay that debt down. So it's not this. Look, I agree with you that we should pay the debt down. I agree with you for a different reason, though. I would prefer to use appeal for the sake of politics. I think you should eat the rich. And in saying I think you should eat the rich, I think anything beyond a certain point needs to go like 98%. tax rate. Then income, the estate tax, again, it needs to be reinforced. Like the cap on Social Security, meaning the amount that they take out your check for Social Security, needs to be increased. Meaning at the point where, I forget the number, 100 and some thousand. That number needs to be higher. It needs to be 300, 400,000. Take the cap off. You can afford and pay for these things. You can pay that debt down. And I would argue you should pay that debt down. Using it purely as a political gimmick or political thing in Republicans. You guys believe that the debt is important. I also believe that the debt is important. Let's pay that shit down by having a tax on the rich for 98% of anything over a certain amount. If they want to play around with this debt, let's play around with the debt. In credit rating system is regressive, oppressive to the working class and poor. Just the interest rate on the debt is like 5% of the national budget. Last time I checked, that's pretty bad. Cop to force, it is pretty bad, but I guess I'm trying to explain this. So I have to be honest. One of the things, look, the number is high. That number is, you stop the wars, you stop dicking around with giving money to all these other people, you put money into the hands of the people at the bottom of the economy, you can get that number down. But that number is not your biggest risk. That number is not your biggest risk. That's my point. Basing our cash on speculation means that speculators are encouraged to create bubbles. Yes, that's true. And then pop them when it becomes profitable to do so. Sometimes the bubbles pop accidentally, though. Yes, Gardner, agreed. Debt is not a debt. The debt is not a debt. Kevin, that's kind of my point. I think I'm saying this poorly. I heard something like that, but no verification of Fiat. Tex Jacobs. President Richard Nixon in 1971, the most significant of which was the unilateral cancellation of the direct international convertibility of the United States dollar to gold. What he's talking about is the creation of fiat currency. Richard Nixon comes out, realizes he has a problem, and says, you know what? From here on out, this money is not backed by squat. Ultimately, what this is backed by is your belief. Believe in us. Believe in us. We're like furries. Believe in us. Private debt is a real problem. The red wabbit, yes, that's true. That's true. The government can pay its debts. So that's true. Zuan Politicon. What's happening? Holly. What's happening? Stephanie Lennon. Public purpose spending will help the 99%. The national debt is the amount of currency in the economy. Stephanie Lennon. Yes. I would love to get Stephanie Kelton on to talk about this. You know, I don't necessarily subscribe to all the tenets of MMT. One thing I completely agree with, hands down, I think I would say it's a flat fact. Congress controls the purse strings. Congress directs the Fed to pay those bills and everything else. Those things are a creature of Congress. Whether or not Congress would do that is a separate thing altogether. But that stuff is a creature of Congress. So, deficit spending is required to keep the United States in existence, which unfortunately is exemplified by defense spending, where parts of the jets and tanks are built in each state, spreading wealth. Creative experiments. It's also spreading a lot of murder and death. Can we have a jobs program that doesn't involve, you know, creating bombs and boats and missiles and bullets and things that actually kill and injure other people? Think of all the shit that's taking place in this country. Think of all the things that are falling apart. Are you telling me we can't get a jobs program to fix shit up in the country? We have to deal purely with this idea of putting $1 trillion in the military? That's fucking amazing. There has to be a better choice than that. MMT is what I currently is. Yes, you don't have to believe in it because it's what we're using. I mean, fuck, man. They got $21 trillion in debt. I mean, yeah. BB Hammer, James Manley. You don't understand why Jamal never mentioned that libertarians are anti-war and pro-civil liberties when he trashed them. BB Hammer, if you look at any of my videos, I've always made this point that lefties and libertarians dovetail extraordinarily nicely on this thing of anti-war and on this thing of civil liberties. I have no complaints. When Rand Paul gave that speech on Congress, I was the first one online. Okay, I don't know if I was the first one, but I was one of those main people saying, fucking A, Rand Paul, good job. When you've heard me make that pitch saying, we need to join together on things like corruption and anti-war and everything else, who do you think I'm talking to? Who do you think I'm talking to? I am talking about those libertarians who, for the most part, have said, who stumbled in and would agree with me on the anti-war and other stuff. I disagree with them on a cartoonish view of economics. I'm sorry. This idea that everybody's working in their own self-interest is going to have some kind of magical thing where everything works out right makes no sense. Makes no sense. Libertarians are really nice tapeworms. Oh God, that's brutal. Read Shamlis Johnson's books. He is good. He is good. I like him. I like him. I like him a lot. Tabitha, as long as we have nukes and overwhelming military peace of oil will always be tied to the United States dollar. Michael Mike, the Russian bot. Creative, we lose net jobs, the more we spend. That stuff doesn't go on to create other things. Went past the point of negative in the 60s, if not earlier. Libertarians are all about the free market. Fuck them. They would say freedom. I mean, their thing would be freedom. But it's like, what do you mean by freedom? Like, these epic terms. You need to define your terms. What do you mean by freedom? A person is not free dying on the street without health care. You could say that is a sort of freedom, but is that the type of freedom that you actually want? If you're working 50 hours a week in a job that you fucking despise, are you a free person? Like, this idea of freedom is... Not to mention, if you're talking about giving private wealth, massive concentrations of cash and capital, again, how are you free? I mean, ultimately, you're... I'm sorry, man. The argument just doesn't hold up. It's... This idea of free market and everybody working on their own self-interest, and, you know, people... The government shouldn't be able to take certain steps and all this other stuff. If we're talking about anti-war, I am right there with you, and I am giving a speech right alongside you. We're holding hands. We're buddy-buddy. If we're talking about civil liberties, I am right there with you. We are holding hands. I'm right there with you. If we're talking about a free market where you're letting people just having a free-for-all, not so much. Not so much. Ayn Rand is garbage. Ayn Rand is garbage. Talking about the Superman. The Superman is the unempathetic person and all this other stuff. But look, that's a perfect example of what I mean. This kind of programming. You're programmed by your experiences. She comes out of Russia. She comes out of what she's, I guess, considered somewhat of an oppressive regime. She gets to the United States and she had ideas. Those ideas are in the opposite of the place that she was, that she disliked. Yeah, she was a sociopath. Libertarians are simply people who have never had a single minute of civics in K-12 and have no idea of what government is. We would never bring down Democrats and GOP if we don't work with the Libertarians. BB Hammer, I agree with you. I agree. And look, I'm being too harsh. Ish. I'm being too harsh. Ish. I'm not against Libertarians. I can have... My annoyances with Libertarians, when I have conversations with Libertarians, is a cartoonish vision of the world. That's all. Yes, anti-war, I'm there with you. Yes, civil liberties, I'm there with you. Yes, I want you to be able to smoke pot in public. I want all that stuff. I want the government to leave me to my devices. Leave me to my devices. Within reason. Like, there's a certain point of things that you say, yes, I accept, I acquiesce to certain things because I believe that that particular structure is necessary. And yes, that particular structure would be somewhat oppressive, but that particular structure is somewhat necessary. If you have different classes in your government, then by definition you're going to have a government because you need, I mean, in your society, you're going to have a government because you need someone to keep the class antagonisms down. Their view of this is like we want to have contracts to show that this is our land. Okay, how do you prove that it's your land? Well, I have a contract. Yeah, but what if that guy has a contract? Well, it's like, well, what are you going to do? You going to fight it out? Like, how? It's like, go. This gets slightly cartoonish. I'm not going to go into it, and I'm not trying to bash libertarians. Under normal circumstances, I am there with them. It's this idea of fuck everybody else. I got mine, and just an unrealistic view of how human beings interact with one another and the societal outcomes. There's nothing wrong with libertarianism if you don't mind having a hellscape as a society. If you want a society where people are intact and you don't have this poverty and everything else, then yeah, you're going to have a different society. You're not going to have libertarianism. All of these things just purely depend on what you're willing to accept in the society to which you exist. So, the conversation between libertarianism, socialism, capitalism, whatever. What do you want to accept? What are you willing to give up in order to accept those things? I don't want poverty in my society. I don't want people in bad straits. So, there's certain things that I'm willing to give up in order to get that particular thing. I mean, there are no utopians. Libertarians are capitalists just like Democrats and Republicans. Libertarians are a little bit more extreme on that one. None your business. Jamal, what do you think of Chomsky's vision of libertarian socialism? I agree with Chomsky on this. So I've heard Chomsky give his definition of anarchy. And it's hard to argue with his definition. The only argument I would make with Chomsky's definition is when you're talking about massive societies, like larger societies. Like say for example, there's an asteroid strike. Can your little anarchist society deal with the asteroid strike? Like, at some point, don't you need some kind of organization at a larger, even global level to deal with those challenges that affect you on a global level? You have climate change. It's going to be cataclysmic, particularly for some of the smaller nations that are in the ocean. I mean, smaller islands or some of the poorer countries. How do you deal with that from the standpoint of this kind of anarchist small government? I just don't know how you deal with that stuff from that perspective. And I'm pretty sure there's a way you can arrange your society in any way you want. What I would say, you can arrange your society in the way you want. I like this idea of being alienated from the services that are being used. Meaning you're born in a society, we've organized our society in a way where technology provides the majority of the labor, the work, the bare necessities of your life. The rest of your life is have your life. What do you want to study? What do you want to go into? What do you want to do? None of this stuff where people are compelled or forced. We as a society made the choice of saying we are going to utilize technology to make sure people have the basic bare bone things that they need to live. You're a free person. You're not beholden to anything. Meaning, if you're not doing a particular task, you're not going hungry, you're not going broke, you're not starving. Nobody is your master. Nobody's your master. I don't want a person doing fries. I don't want a person driving an Uber. If there's a robot to do those things, I want a robot to do those things. The human being has a massive, immense potential. I mean, the human being that looks up at the stars and contemplates what's out there, that thinks about these equations, that thinks about this technology that can build rocket ships to go to point A to point B, think of these art, poetry, and all this other stuff. And that person is sitting there as a fry cook. If there's a robot that can do a job that a human being can do, I want a robot to do that job. I want human beings to be free. Meaning I want society to be configured and arranged in the way that allow people to be free. Not the libertarian version of free, where everybody is, fighting for cash and everything else. I'm talking about actual freedom, where the individual has the things that particular person needs, and how that person wants to articulate their life. They articulate their life. It doesn't mean you're not going to work. At some point, everybody works. You're going to have something that you're going to do. But as a society, we say we have the technology to make sure that everyone has the basics that they need. And do it. That's your only path to freedom. Like, there is no such thing as you getting freedom as a libertarian if somebody else also doesn't have freedom. And the goal of your life isn't to work. God damn it. I mean, working is something that you do because you need to supply a need. It's not an end unto itself. If you have the capacity to meet those needs, then you don't have to work in the way that you're working. Your society can change. I'm not dogmatic on this stuff. I don't like, I don't have this, I'm not a socialist or anything else. I look at this stuff from a technological point of view and say, okay, what do I want to do in my society and how do I want to do it? And what is the technology available to help me do that thing? So yeah, I'm not dogmatic on this. There are certain things that I want society to do. Beyond those things, I'm not all that picky about how those things get done, providing those things are not done in a way that destroys the world. Now, let me say it this way. We're on a planet. We're floating through the cosmos. As we're floating through the cosmos, as human beings, we are linked to our particular world and our particular environment. If at any time something goes wrong with our environment, that will adversely affect us. Meaning there is a carrying capacity of this planet. If we exceed the carrying capacity of this planet, we are going to end our civilization. It's that simple. Any ideology, anything that you come up with, if it doesn't take into account the fact that there's a carrying capacity of the planet, that there are things that we need in order to meet, meaning social pressures and everything else, if it doesn't take those things into effect, if it doesn't take those things into account, meaning just what real people do, how real people behave, none of this ideological shit, what do people need to be self-actualized? And how do we need to get that level of self-actualization without destroying the planet that we live on? That is the only workable point of view that you can start from. Anything else completely ignores the fact that there are real things that you need to account for. And there's other stuff that I hear, be it libertarianism, social, all this stuff is just ideology. I'm not into any particular ideology. Bob Ramirza, thank you, dude. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. Zuon Political. Anti-war party would be wise. Agreed. It's like, how the hell do you get an anti-war party? I'd give Jamal the answer, but it will violate the temporal prime directive. Ugh. You got to tell Bob that Star Trek episode where Captain Picard is like bugging the shit out of that guy for the answer. Oh no, Jamal is around Earth a little bit. A Venus project is a wonderful idea. Unfortunately, it would take a dramatic change in human nature to make it work. Brahm SL1, yes. Yes, it would. Yes, it would. But it's an awesome idea. And it's a work in progress idea. You've heard me say, get rid of cash. The thing is, though, the moment that you do it, the next generation will be used to it and accustomed to it. Like, it's not, it is hard to get across. You live in a terrifying reality. And part of that reality feeds back on itself, meaning there's somewhat of a feedback loop. Your reality says this is what reality is. This is how people act. People, can be harsh. They can be living on the street. They can be getting their heads chopped off somewhere. This is our reality. And it programs the individual to behave in a particular way to accommodate themselves, to acclimate themselves to this particular reality. Meaning kindness, compassion, empathy, those aren't necessarily things that are prized in certain situations in our society. It perpetuates itself. How do you change fundamentally the individual when that individual is completely controlled by the society to which that individual exists in? Meaning my range of freedom and my range of degrees. I'm either rebelling against the society or accepting the society. But either way, I'm responding to the society itself. Not doing it, shouldn't avoid. I guess what I'm getting at is, yes, you're right. It would take a massive sea change to get to the Venus Project. Not because human nature is somehow flawed. It's we're being programmed in this kind of circular loop of this is what human nature is, in which case we just kind of live this loop over and over and over again until something cataclysmic changes that forces people out of their normal bounds. I don't know what that cataclysmic change is. And I gotta be honest, I think the Venus Project is an awesome fucking idea. But how do you get people who are so enraptured by the things that they come across just in a normal everyday basis to say, wait a minute, the point of life is not to work? That's a mind-blowing revelation. The point of life is not to work. It's one thing when we couldn't meet our needs. Working makes perfect sense if you need to get your needs met. I need to tow the field so my family will have something to eat. But what does it mean to work in our society when machines and all this other stuff can meet our needs? And we've gotten to the point where we're buying extra shit that we don't need. Our needs are met. Now we have advertisement that people are investing money and cash into to get people to buy more shit that they don't need. What does it mean when we're buying shit that we don't need while other people either starve, are homeless, or go without? That is a terrifying reality, and that is a terrifying society. Whatever the issues that may come up associated with the Venus Project, at the very least, when you're counting up what are the problems where we are and what may be the problems where we move to, war, corruption, poverty, infant mortality rates, environmental degradation, you go down the list. The harm to the human being, meaning human beings die earlier because of the hierarchical structure in our particular society. It's like a social friction associated with just us living in this particular society and the way the society is arranged. You go down the list. None of those things are present in the Venus society, even though there would be other issues with the Venus society. There is no utopia. There's utopia. What about the Greens, DSA, and others merging? Man, I hope that's the case. Anna, I so hope that's the case. I hope Brana, Democratic Socialists of America, Green Party, Independents, I hope all of those people grab hands and scream Kumbaya and create some sort of federation if they need to. And federation may be the wrong word. But if each group want to keep their unique identity, meaning DSA wants to keep its unique identity, Greens want to keep their identity, etc., etc., create some kind of coalition. Like all of you guys are working together in tandem. There are going to be some places where DSA runs, there are going to be some places where Green runs, but ultimately you guys are, for the most part, running in a similar fashion. You may consider it one party, but that one party has multiple factions within that particular party. I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea, considering that the left, for the most part, is somewhat unified in this way. They need to unify. I mean, they're smaller parties. They need to unify. The Green Party has open access or ballot access, if I'm not mistaken, on all 50 states. Unify. Do not go under the banner of the Greens, but unify. Unify. Media is a factor. People having no idea what we're doing, anything in Iraq and Afghanistan. Agreed. This is an oligarch in transition to fascism. You speak about America as if it's in stasis, JT. It is not. Without a revolution, we'll keep moving towards fascism until we finally make it. I don't think we're moving towards fascism. Gardo thinks I want to go with TYT. No, I don't think we're moving towards fascism. I think we're already in fascism. It depends on what your definition is. Depends on what your definition is. what? We have 5% of the world's population with 25% in our prisons. We have more people in our prisons than they had in like China. I mean, China is 3 times our population. You have police that can shoot people on the street and get off completely. You have no accountability in regards to politics. You have a politician who can pretty much do the opposite of what he said he was going to do in that office, and there's no accountability for it because the other guy's off the fucking political spectrum. I miss how you're not there. I miss how we're not there. Corporatism is soft fascism. You can call it soft fascism if you want. There's a lot of people living on the streets and being fucked over. Yvonne Legolas, imperialism and democracy cannot coexist. Agreed, Yvonne. America #1 at locking people up. We are, Dax. We are. Fascism has long been here. Jenny Lynn, yeah, where have you been? Yeah, agreed. I mean, it depends on what you mean by fascism. If you're talking about this merger between state and corporate, come on, that's been here for a while. When Eisenhower gave that speech, the military-industrial complex speech, that's literally what he's talking about. This merger, this fusion between government and the war machine. This kind of self-perpetuating thing. Oh, there's another threat. Oh, there's another threat. There's zombies over there. We need $1 trillion to fight zombies. Yeah. Folks from Australia seem to be the main ones who have the guts to speak out about what's happening. Julian Assange, Caitlin Johnston, truth tellers. Jan Mansled. We're definitely living under a totalitarian system. And yeah, Jarno, Hedges calls us some inverted totalitarianism. Yeah, he does. He makes this argument that it's not totalitarianism in a normal case. It's totalitarianism by this kind of faceless agency, where you have this kind of corporate state that doesn't necessarily have a strong man in place, but the corporate state itself is almost this faceless anonymity of oppression. It's just fucking fascinating. He gets this from I can't think of the guy's name. Wolin. Something Wolin. I can't remember his first name. Sharon Wolin or something. If you guys haven't watched it yet, check out Naomi Wolf's End of America. Even more relevant now. Now we have a strong man, though. You can call him strong. I think he's... Yeah, you can call him strong. Crozza Owls. How will global warming ever be fixed when North America is a deep freeze and the rest of the world is currently experiencing record highs? Because America have globalist blinders. It's winter. It's winter. It's like, seasons change. When they're looking at the temperature of the earth, they're not taking just one specific measurement. They're talking about the temperature of the planet. And the temperature of the planet has been going up year after year after year after year after year. Do you know they recently had satellite footage, and we're using the satellite footage to keep more accurate records to see how their predictions line up with what the reality is? Their predictions were understated. The reality was worse, meaning the range and the spectrum that they gave this idea of climate change was on the far end of the spectrum of being worse. And there is no hint that we're taking the gas off the pedal. Even if you had Hillary Clinton, she was still selling fracking around the planet. So, there's that. Trump's a puppet, not a strongman dictator. Gardner agreed. I think the person who was most shocked on election day in November was Donald Trump. It's like, holy shit, I won? God damn it, I didn't want to be president. Trump is a business Democrat. Sharon Wolin, I think. Inverted totalitarian. Yeah. Green Party of Santa Clara. Climate change scientists have been very accurate, but we never hear that on CNN. You hear it sometimes, but CNN usually gives you this dumbass debate as if there's an actual debate. If you're going to have a debate, fine, have a debate. But have it in the percentages of the reports. Meaning, have 98 scientists and have 2 guys who disagree. Have that conversation. Our media narratives keep people in place, but when people do wake up, the state will use force against us. Tabitha Enriquez. Yeah, that's the socialist argument too. That's the the Lenin or Karl Marx argument. That at a certain point, state is a tool of oppression. That at the point where the state becomes this kind of naked thing where they don't necessarily have the control or the integrity, or people don't necessarily see what they're doing in a sense of integrity, then at that point the thing they have is brute force in order to oppress the public. Yeah. Keep an eye on your government. Global warming has already changed the jet stream in Canada. More rain in spring and more so in the summer. Jet stream may stay longer rather than moving on for a day or two of flooding. Yvonne, there was even reports where people were talking about the jet stream shutting down. That's how bad some of this stuff was. It's amazing. The accidental president. I love that. That should be on the t-shirt. Almost every month a new record. Yeah, warmer. Yeah, more snow, warmer water, less ice, more airborne. We keep our thumb on Australia. Still, I think we keep our thumb on Australia. Kevin, problem is having the extra energy widely spread out in an atmosphere and an ocean. Oh, problem is having that energy wide, right? Because they can't necessarily see the thing. Are you an advocate of statelessness, Jenny? Well, I'm not Jenny, but I can answer that question. Statelessness only. Statelessness is not something you can just impose. Statelessness is something that's supposed to happen. Look, at least going by the Karl Marx thing, the state, you know, after you destroy, smash the apparatus of the state, or after you create this kind of this I always get that word wrong. Proletariat. I'm saying the word wrong. Essentially, a worker dictatorship. I can see the word in my head. I just can't say it. But the idea of smashing the state apparatus and reforming it into a way that actually is advantageous to us. I mean, I've heard the argument for statelessness. This idea that at a certain point, people just kind of interact in these free associations without the need for the state. The state withers away on its own devices once you get rid of the class antagonisms. Maybe, I mean, it's a hypothesis. Proletariat. That's it. Thank you. I could not get the word out to save my life. Proletariat. Even now. I've heard this word so many times. I've read that. Proletariat. That's it. Proletariat. That's it. Proletariat Dictatorship. Thank you. None of your business, pretty much. Serfs. SERFs. FS. Alright, guys. I am going to end this. Look, guys, I appreciate everyone showing up. Chris Hedges is the man. Love the guy to death. But he's, but I think he's right. And I think it's one of those things, you see those systems, like he's been a reporter for God knows how long. The guy's been all over the world in these countries that are falling apart. And he makes comparisons between those countries falling apart and us. He makes uncomfortable comparisons. And what does a man do when you see something like that? And, you know, his writing shows it. His speeches, if you listen to his lectures, same thing. He's giving this warning like, oh my God, this looks exactly like XYZ when I was in this particular place. So, Gardner, we cannot eliminate class antagonism. We can only practice harm reduction. It is written into DNA. Yeah, I don't believe that. That's a belief. I'm sorry, that's a belief. This idea is it's not written into your DNA, dude. I don't know why you think that. We have a society that pings on certain things. Yeah, we have a society that pings on certain things. I don't have that belief system. I think Hedges understands the emergency of the situation. Yvonne, I do too. Agreed. Fossil fuel energy uses efficiency improvements. Trump is a conservative populist. Imagine a Jeb Bush presidency right now. What is it, going for another hour? Yeah, I'm not going for another hour. I'm going to end it this time. It's her turn, damn it. Spending your days gathering water again. In my life. What? Stephanie, I don't know the conversation you guys are having. Alright, guys. I am going to end this. A Jeb Bush president would be the same. To some degree. I mean, Jeb Bush wouldn't be tweeting. But let's be honest. Donald Trump is a Republican. I mean, we're acting like he's some odd thing. He's a Republican. He's acting as a Republican. All history backs up the fact is written to our DNA. Cave people, all social animals, organize themselves in hierarchies. But you're talking about something biologically written into the DNA of the individual. Let's see. Let's flip this over right now. As opposed to the social factors itself that pushes people to behave in a particular way. That's what I'm getting at. That's all I'm getting at. Social hierarchy, class antagonism. Yeah, we're going to disagree on that one, dude. That's fine. Bush family is Illuminati. Oh, wow. People can't even handle their internet going down. Trump has dragged everything further to the right. And I don't think so. I mean, what do you believe that Donald Trump has dragged further to the right? Any random Republican getting in office. Say Trump got impeached. Say you had Mike Pence. What do you believe that Mike Pence is going to do in that office? That Donald Trump, or what do you believe Trump is going to do in that office that Mike Pence wouldn't do or wouldn't even try to do? I wagered that those things would be the same. I wagered that those quantities will be the same. Trump did kill the TPP, so yeah, fucking A on that one. I don't think Pence would be, yeah, that's my point. I think any random Republican that you put in that slot will be behaving the same way with the exception of tone. Exception of tone. Pence's Koch brothers. Pence is also a manifestation of the far right. But I guess my point is the party is the far right. Like, I don't know of a moderate Republican. Well, who's a moderate Republican? And are you telling me that they wouldn't necessarily cater to the far right? Would a moderate Republican have killed Obamacare? Yes. Yes. Would a moderate Republican be chest thumping in North Korea? Yes. Like, all the things that Donald Trump is doing, a moderate Republican would be doing. He maybe wouldn't move the thing to Jerusalem. Maybe. But again, I wouldn't even be surprised by that. The worst thing about Trump getting elected is Democrats have learned nothing. God known Trump is standard GOP. Yes, I think so too. I think so too. Democrats equal moderate Republicans. Yes. 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 If you were anywhere else in the world, I'm not going to say anywhere. If you were in Europe, the Democrats would be the far right party. Put that shit in context. Like, the Democrats would be the far right party. Even if you were in London, Democrats would be the conservatives in this mix. Sad and pathetic. Not co-signing that shit. I don't know why anybody would co-sign that. Like, why would you co-sign something that's not representing your interests? I understand you're terrified of the other guy, but you understand they're gaming the system in this way. They understand that you're fearful of them so they can behave any way they want. They'll talk a particular thing. They'll talk sweet. Down in Brazil will try to invite you back and try to make you popcorn or something. But ultimately, the party is fundamentally what that party is. It's not going to change. At least I don't think it's going to change without any kind of pressure exerted on it to change. I don't see the pressure. Stephanie Chateau. There's no way to win. The Hillary feminist camp has lost the plot. Totally aggressive historical people. While Bernie is a pushover. Jill can't get a leg up. I don't think Bernie will be a pushover in this one, Stephanie. But we'll see. Because Bernie is running again in 2020. If they have to roll his ass out there in a wheelchair, Bernie Sanders running in 2020. All right, I'm going to end it. I said I was going to end it. I'm going to hold myself to that. All right, guys, I appreciate this. I had an awesome alien one that I wanted to do, and I still might do. And I had one that I wanted to do about sex, particularly sexual harassment more than anything else. So sexist behavior. Let's say it that way. I wanted to have that conversation, but they'll be on another one. Maybe not tonight, but at the very least tomorrow or something like that. So I will end this here, guys. I would like to thank you for coming out, man. I appreciate it. I do appreciate it. And I am going to end it here. All right, guys. Oh, by the way, Bob, thanks for the super cash. Super cash is always appreciated, and I would say at this point, helpful. Let's say helpful and appreciate it. Also, guys, for everybody who's contributing to Patreon, again, I want to thank you for that also. So, if you guys enjoy the content, of course, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And of course, you can always support the Patreon. Thanks, guys. Where's my mouse? There.